Movie-Club Emporium. And this week, we are talking about The Mummy. Not just, so you're not confused, not just any mummy, Lee Cronin's The Mummy. Now, this is a new kind of take on a classic monster, Universal monster from old Blumhouse. And it's getting pretty mixed receptions. And so I had to go out and see it. I was very curious. I liked Evil Dead Rise, and so I was like, okay, we're doing a new Mummy movie. Lee Cronin's The Mummy, and I'm assuming we're doing that much like if you are of a DVD age. Remember, Walmart used to have 2-pack blue or DVDs, and they were all just mostly terrible movies. But when you were building a movie collection, you gotta start somewhere, and it was like for $10, and you got uh, it was like Hellraiser Inferno and Russell Mulcahy's Tales of the Mummy. Um, and I'm assuming much like that film, Lee Cronin's The Mummy is called Lee Cronin's The Mummy, not because of some John Carpenter esque ego, but because when you say The Mummy, you think of Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz, running around the desert. Or if you're of that 1% who was just like all in on the dark universe, you think Tom Cruise, uh, you know, running around and jumping out of falling planes and stuff. But since there's a new one of the Brendan Fraser movies in the works because the dark universe is long dead, we went with a name here. And so Lee Cronin's The Mummy. And again, it's getting kind of mixed reception, especially online. Looking at it, a lot of people were coming out of it saying, "Oh, it's an Evil Dead movie I didn't know I needed." A lot of people also complaining, much like the complaint about the Wolfman, is that it's basically the Mummy in name only. It's not really a classic Mummy. Much like the Wolfman isn't really a classic Wolfman movie. And so I went into it wondering what I was going to get with it. And I'm here to tell you that if you are looking for just a really kind of unforgiving, kind of fun horror ride, uh, then this is it. I mean, it's definitely building on the kind of filmmaking style and gnarly moments like Evil Dead Rise. However, for people who are saying that this is just Evil Dead Egypt, I would combat that because this doesn't feel like Lee Cronin doing Evil Dead again. There is one particular character that has a part toward the end where I felt like he was just like, and then the deadite back, and then the mummy. Um, there's a character where that does feel that way, and it is very much shot much like almost exactly like Evil Dead Rise. However, I feel like this is more akin to the movie that kind of put Lee Cronin on the map, which is Hole in the Ground. This is definitely that in that vein of movies that, and I think it's very interesting to take the Mummy in that direction. Whether it's something like uh I I love the Universal monster movies. I love them. But they are not uh those are not films that are creatures that are relatively um cutting edge or scary, in today's day and age. Uh I mean, Wolfman can be, but the Mummy hasn't been scary. Let's be honest. The Mummy hasn't been scary since the 30s, right? When Boris Karloff wore the raps. The Mummy, the character of the Mummy, has been relegated to like action adventure films. And I say that as somebody who loves 1999's The Mummy. It's one of my favorite movies growing up. I even enjoyed and have a lot of fun with The Mummy Returns, bad CG and all, and the little snot-nosed kid. I'm excited to see what they're gonna do, bringing back, doing a fourth Mummy movie. I'm so intrigued by that. For one, aside from the, like 30-minute, we gotta set up this universe toot sweet of the Mummy with Tom Cruise, it's like a kind of a fun, dumb action movie. It's basically Tom Cruise trying to out Mission Impossible the Mummy. So I kind of have fun with it in that kind of dumb respect. But the Mummy is not a scary character. And so much like something where the Invisible Man, which is the one of these that everybody seems to universally love, we take the smallest kernel of what we know and what the facts are about the Invisible Man, and we modernize it in a way that is touching on something that has not been touched on before in that storytelling. Whether it's this is a horrific, toxic um relationship, and also invisibility. Whereas the Wolfman from last year isn't so much about whoever is bitten by a wolf when the moon is. It's about it's more in the line of, like I said in my review of it, The Fly. Um, Cronenberg's The Fly, where it's a man having to watch himself from the inside become a threat to his family because of be it disease or addiction or whatever. That's kind of where we're on, and watching that your loved one, you cannot always protect your loved ones, especially sometimes from yourself. This movie very much is about a loss of a child, and the grief of that, and then getting that child seemingly back, and then also having to, how far will you go to make yourself believe that everything is okay? Something like we're akin to now in horror with, again, Lee Cronin's Hole in the Ground. Bring Her Back from last year. Pet Cemetery is that. A movie that should absolutely be made, but right now it's just a book, but it should actually be adapted. Craig DeLuise' Suffer the Children. It is about getting back that um filling that void inside of you because of that grief, but sometimes all you're filling that void with is more of a void, because not necessarily, what necessarily comes back isn't what was. And that's what we're dealing with this version of the Mummy. With a young girl goes missing. Her family lives in Egypt, so it does take place. It wasn't just like, oh, the Mummy of like, uh, Colorado Springs. That's the majority of the movie takes place in Egypt, where a little girl is taken, and for 8 years she's missing. And one day they tell the family, "Hey, we found her. She's alive. Now here's a lot of weird things, a lot of ticks she's got, but you have your daughter back." And then having to deal with uh, not only the guilt of being the parent who may or may have not been on duty when the child went missing. We're dealing with the pent up anger and regret there. You're dealing with your children, who didn't disappear, how they're feeling, and then you bring in this thing that you've been told is your missing daughter, and how much are you willing to look past in order to believe that maybe that's true? There's a very famous real story about a a family whose son was, I think, killed in action, And one day a guy showed up and said he was their long lost son, even though he didn't look like their son and he didn't remember certain dates. They took him in, and for all intents and purposes, in their mind, that was their son now because they refused to let go. And the movie deals with that. It deals with um again things like her uh Bring Her Back deals with this kind of, what are you willing to sacrifice in order to keep your family together? And it does this really great job of doing all that while also having all of this, like, for a lack of very, very gnarly, visceral moments of just, oh, there wasn't a lot of people in my theater, but there was several moments of just sitting back going, oh, um, mostly revolving around this the grandmother in the family. She is put through it. Uh, but it does a great job of kind of setting up why we're using the idea of a mummy, an Egyptian centric uh villain, if you will, to tell this story with these Americans. And yeah, it is kind of, there are a lot of moments that kind of feel very forced. Some plot holes that are in it, again, with like there's characters who really don't need to be in it as much as they are, and necessarily don't need to come back when they do. There are characters who kind of disappear in the third act momentarily. For other characters that shouldn't be in the movie as well. It's for this movie, it's long. It's 2 hours and 5 minutes. Definitely could be shorter. There are a lot of moments of like the family is getting ready to move to New York, and when they're in Cairo or they're in Egypt, when the girl goes missing, because the father played by Jack Rainier, who will always be the world's worst boyfriend from Midsommar. Um, he's a news reporter. He's in the field out there. He's getting ready to take a big job in New York, and because his daughter goes missing, they move to Albuquerque instead because there's lots of sand out there too, guys. It's like it's like the Sahara Desert of the Southwest. Everybody does that. Um, but I will say, if you go into this wanting to have a movie that a kind of makes the idea of the Mummy more than just like an Indiana Jones light type situation, and I say that with all respect of the Mummy, the Mummy movies, but kind of makes it a scary creature again. Yes, does it lean into aspects of filmmaking that were definitely brought to the front of Lee Cronin's last film, Evil Dead Rise? Yes. However, I feel like if this wasn't the same guy who made that last Evil Dead movie, this would not be getting that kind of comparison. It's only because it's the same guy, and he does use a lot of the same kind of camera tricks for this movie as well. However, I definitely feel it is much more in tune with something like Hole in the Ground, Bring Her Back, Pet Cemetery, um, but also, again, justifies this is a new take on a classic monster that really has no relevancy nowadays and kind of gives it that. And so I am kind of hoping that, I don't know what the next, this new Blumhouse Monsterverse would be. To be fair, to me, they've gotten 3 solid movies with The Invisible Man, um, uh, the Wolf Man, and The Mummy. You know, I don't know if we're gonna try to like tackle the big D. I feel like Frankenstein, The Bride, I know wasn't well received, but I thought it did a great kind of twist on the Frankenstein mythos. Let's do a creature movie and not where you know, Michael Shannon's chasing it while somebody's trying to bang it. Let's do like an actual like classic creature from the Black Lagoon or a new, Phantom, whatever. But I think that Um, for a movie that was getting a lot of flack for not being a mummy movie and being more of an Evil Dead movie, I don't see the justification for that. I totally felt, aside from, there was a complete lack of Fez hats. um, this, by all intents and purposes, is a mummy movie that you can look at now in 2026 and say, hey man, mummies can be pretty scary again. And so I think it's one that should be checked out. I think it should be enjoyed, especially in the theater. I had a lot of fun. My biggest complaint is that I went to the theater to see it because they told me that's how I was going to be able to see the Evil Dead Burn trailer. And it didn't play in front of my movie. I got the Moana one instead. And I mean, to be fair, the Rock looks terrifying in that trailer. But I wanted an Evil Dead trailer. But I do recommend seeing the Mummy if you can stomach it, because there are definitely some scenes that are rough, uh, and are very much visceral. I may never clip my toenails again, so keep that in mind. And then otherwise, yeah, I don't know what comes out next week, but I'll be seeing. We'll have a review of something coming up soon here. Will be our April live hangout, and we'll be doing it at the end of the month. Nick and I are talking about Mad Max Knockoffs Volume 2. Uh, so, you know, ironically enough, we didn't plan on dealing with Mad Max gas prices when we set this up a year ago, but we're talking about Mad Max Knockoffs. And then I will go ahead and tell you now, if you've made it this far, Mortal Kombat 2 is coming out the beginning of next month. We will not be reviewing it then. You're going to have to wait till the end of May, because that is going to be the topic of our May live hangout. You've heard it here first. We're doing the Mortal Kombat franchise. So mark your calendars for that. And while you're marking things, why don't you mark that like button, mark the subscribe button if you haven't already, and share us around. We're trying to get to triple digits, and we really would like your help with that. Our last video for Faces of Death did fairly well, so I'm really excited about that. Thank you guys for watching that. And let's keep that going. In fact, it went so well that I can tell you right now, Nick's uh, next post theater clarity is going to be over Faces of Death. So you've got my review last Sunday, and you're going to get Nick's take on it here on Wednesday. So stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for next Sunday, where we'll have something to talk about. And then make sure you're there at the end of the month for our Mad Max live hangout. And until then, I will see you guys next time. Bye.